Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Co-Star, the official newspaper of the Borough of Belmar, and the Asbury Park Press on December 22nd, 2021. A notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Take roll call. Councilman Brennan?
Here.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Here.
Mayor Walsifer?
Here.
Councilman McCracken?
Here.
Councilman Carmelli?
Yeah, here.
Thank you, April. If everybody could join me in saluting the flag of our great nation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everybody could just remain standing for a moment of silence for our troops, their families, all our first responders, and especially for all the first responders that had to deal with the 10 people that were in the water at the 8th Avenue Beach last week. 9 people were rescued. They did a great job, but unfortunately, Fernando Perez did not make it. Thank you. Okay, first thing that we have, if everybody can join me off the dais, we have a presentation from the Women's Club. So if they can come up. Yep.
Jim.
The Women's Club is not quite as old as Belmar. We believe we started about 107 years ago. And one of the things we've always done is support Belmar and the organizations in Belmar. You may have read in the paper that we just gave out 3 scholarships at the beginning of this month. And in the past, we've always donated to the fire department, the first aid squad, etc. here in Belmar. Well, tonight, because it's the 150th anniversary of Belmar, we'd like to present 4 checks for $150 each to the Belmar Historical Society, the Belmar Fire Departments, the Belmar Historical Society, and the Belmar Police Department for their next Unity Ride. So I'm very pleased for us to be doing this.
I'm Spencer Hewlett, President of Belmar Historical Society. And it's always nice to know that others think that what you're doing is important. And I think this is very generous to the Women's Club. It's an organization that demonstrates what community is all about, helping others. And we appreciate you very much also. And find you very important in the community also. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Louis Polito, the Library Assistant to the Belmar Public Library. On behalf of the Belmar Library Board of Trustees, staff, and all our patrons here in Belmar, I want to thank you for this, again, generous donation to the library. It's a great recognition by a wonderful organization here in town, the library's importance to our community and helping our patrons here on the 4 things that you can do at the library, which is to browse, to work, to study, and to learn. Thank you very much. Thank you very
On behalf of Chief Tia Scott, for those who don't know me,
the police duty tour and the Belmar team. We have about 7 or 8 riders that ride from this department with Chapter 10 of the police duty tour. This was very much appreciated, and this will go towards our 2023 ride for next year. We were able to, between all of the chapters throughout the country, we were able to make a donation of $2 million to the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund. So, thank you very much.
And the Belmar Fire Department. Last but not.
I'm Chief Jason Downing. Thank you very much. With everything going on in this day, we do a lot of training, so I think this is going to go towards a lot of the training we do. You've seen us out there, you know, actually just before the summer, we were out there doing some beach training, you know, with the collapses and things like that. So this is stuff that we really need to stay good up on, and this will go towards that. Thank you very much.
You guys are so important, we hope we never see you.
Yes, yes, thank you.
I just would like to thank the Women's Club. I mean, they're such a big part of our community. I always appreciate all of our volunteers that work in all the different areas, the Historical Society, and everybody that volunteers their time to make Belmar what it is. So I really thank you guys. Do a great job raising the money and donating to all these great causes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we line up everybody? Line up so we can get a picture? Work should be up front, and the ladies go up front. Louis? Fire, please. So you guys know what we're looking for. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. There we go. It's there. You can't see the lens, I can't see you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good job, Cameron.
Okay, we got, for workshop, we had a public hearing on the sidewalk assessment last week. And there seems to be, after that meeting and taking a look at it and talking to our engineer, there was some issues with the engineering costs that were put out for the sidewalk assessment. So I asked Peter Ravakian, our engineer, to come and explain to the council of exactly what took place with the engineering costs. So Peter, if you could just give the council an overview of what took place the other night and what our problems are.
I'll be glad to, Mayor. Thank you. I am addressing my comments to the Mayor and Council, but they also run to the public and the members of the public that were there or that were a part of this assessment program. Yes, we did have a public hearing. Lorraine was there, as was Patrick, and we had a tax collector, tax assessor, representative of construction code was there. And we explained the overall assessment and improvement project and explained some reasoning behind the delay between the actual construction and the assessment. The ordinance was 2016 when it was initially funded. And it was funded a second time because it was a very positive program. It's gone on now for a little too long to anticipate an assessment is not going to get some kind of response from the residents. So that is why we had the public hearing, to listen to the concerns raised by the residents. Administratively, cost-wise, factually, we listened to everything. We identified the people by name, by address. Frank Sinelli made the opportunity in the next few days following that public hearing to go out and look at the properties of most everyone who had a comment that questioned the actual measurements of their improvements. So we accumulated a lot of information when we listened. And what we found was that the initial billing was made at the time of the ordinance. And the initial billing was based on an estimate. And that estimate would be a unit price that we expected to come in with a bid and how much square footage or how much linear footage you had for curb or sidewalk in the property. And then you make a representation to the property owner, And that number then is changed when the actual construction is completed. It becomes what we call an as-built number, and it's a final construction number. Whatever is paid to the contractor for the square yards of sidewalk and the linear feet of curbing is what is billed to the property owner. Those numbers were all understood by each of the residents. What wasn't understood was that on top of that, there was an engineering assessment. And that was based on a number that none of us saw, none of us could really figure how it was calculated or paid. And there was a proposal for the first phase of the project, but there was never a proposal or a cost estimate for the second phase of the project. But the engineering firm was paid for all that work. And it was, I'll use the word disproportionate. The percentage of engineering fees were disproportionate to the amount of work done. They represented approximately 30% of the construction cost of the project. Because of that, we stepped back, listened to the comments, thought about the comments, and in my correspondence with Administrator Kirschenbaum, made a recommendation that the Mayor and Council considers removing the engineering assessment from the sidewalk assessment, meaning that the property owners would pay merely for the work completed, not for any administrative costs associated with the project. Those costs would be absorbed by the borough as they would in any type of capital improvement project. Taking it a step further, I thought it would be important for all of us to understand what that means when you're looking at these properties. There were 238 properties that were in the assessment program. The construction cost was about $645,000 for the two phases, and the engineering assessment was $192,000. So I looked at 4 properties just as an overview. What I call the small property with 35 feet of frontage. You would typically do the sidewalk in disrepair or the curbing in disrepair just in front of the property. A medium-sized lot, which is 50 feet. A medium-sized lot on a corner, which is 50 feet of frontage with frontage along the side street. And then a larger lot on a corner, which is 100 feet of frontage and maybe the same on a corner. And just very briefly, the estimated cost for the small lot was $980. The actual cost was $1,103. That to me makes perfect sense because maybe a little more work was done. Maybe the actual cost was based on the contractor's numbers, which were a little different than the estimate. But then the resident got a bill for a total cost, and that included engineering. So you're a resident, you know the actual cost is $1,100, and then you get a bill for $1,432. And you go, why? And Lorraine and I took one for the team, and we came to the public hearing, and Patrick did as well, and we tried to answer why. But it was difficult, because we really didn't have all the rationale behind why it was so high. I've done these before. I've done them before where I only included in the assessment portion my engineering fees associated with the assessment, not with the construction, keeping the overall cost a little lower for the taxpayer. So our thought of considering removing the engineering on this particular property would reduce the bill from $1,432 back to the actual construction cost of $1,103, or a savings of $329. So again, I assessed the other properties. The larger lot, I'll give you, the estimated cost was $5,115. That's 100 by 100 on the corner. The actual cost was exactly the same. So they either did a good job of assessing, or it was quite remarkable that it was exactly the same, $5,115. The engineering assessment associated with that was $1,527, which to me is disproportionately high for the type of work that was done. And really what it entailed was an inspector making sure the contractor formed the sidewalk correctly, poured the sidewalk to the proper depth, did the proper measurements along the frontage of the property, and then provided that in a certification. That bill would be reduced by $1,527 back down to $5,115, which was probably the number that the resident thought they were going to be billed when they got that second bill from the borough. Really, that's the gist of it. The rationale is that we all thought in listening to the comments that there was an underlying disappointment with the project, not because of the construction, because everybody said it was done very well, but because of the administration. And we were a bit at a loss because we had issues that we couldn't control. We were ready to go in 2020, and COVID hit. We weren't able to have a public hearing. We had actually had correspondence trying to schedule the public hearing at that time, and then it got pushed and pushed and pushed. And we looked bad because it took 2 years to get that public hearing held, when in fact we just really couldn't do it in that 2-year time period. So here we are, a bit of a mea culpa. We understand what we have to do. It has to be done, but we're asking the mayor and council to consider this reduction in the assessment so that we give something back to the residents so they don't get burdened with an assessment that we felt was a little unbalanced, I'll say. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, Mayor and Council.
Just to make it clear, you weren't the engineer on this project.
No, we would have done it differently.
Perfectly clear.
Lorraine wasn't the CFO, Ed wasn't the administrator, you weren't the mayor.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the first bond, there was a contracted price of about $92,000 for engineering, but there was no, on the second bond, there was no contracted price. They just doubled it, had no mechanism really to pay them, but they did. Right?
My understanding, and I reviewed all the file information on what the borough had on the file, there was a engineering proposal for the first phase, and that was presented, the scope of work was presented. I have every reliance that that scope of work was completed, but then another thing happened, which was the borough code enforcement had to go out and make the actual measurements to verify the work done. I went out with Frank Sinelli and we inspected the properties together, and I provided a certification that in fact the work was done. And there were 2 or 3 properties we looked at where it wasn't quite accurate, and we adjusted them. Yeah, that's correct.
Anybody have any questions for Peter?
Yeah, Mr. Avakian, I know this was done under previous administration, under previous engineer, but you had mentioned that the percent of engineering costs to construction costs was 30%. In your experience, what's a normal percentage that an engineering firm would charge for such a project?
I'll answer it this way. The answer is no, but I'll answer it this way. On a project like this, it's called a unit price bid. You go out to bid to a contractor and say, listen, we're going to have sidewalk all over the borough. You're going to get a value to giving us a lower price because you're going to get more volume to do. And that's how the contractor is going to make his money, keeping his unit price down low. So that's the competitive bid portion of it. There isn't really any engineering design. It's really giving them a list of addresses. And I understood that that list expanded dramatically during the course of the project because people saw the work being done, and then they said, hey, this is great. You got a low unit price. If I went to a contractor, I'd pay 1.5 times that much. So it was a very positive project. So the engineering done for that, if it was a DOT project like we do our road improvements, we're capped at 15%. We can't bill more than 15% for contract administration, and we call it construction observation or inspection. So no, this was definitely on the high side, especially when you consider the fact that you hired a mason contractor. He was proficient at this work. He did a great job. I would tend to think if you asked me now that the construction oversight would be on the lower side because of the value of the work that you got from the contract. So 15% plus or minus, maybe a little less than that.
Just to be clear, so if we waive these fees, the borough is going to absorb these fees. Taxpayers are not going to absorb any of these fees or anything like that. That's part of the taxes. Got it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Just making it clear. I kind of wanted to find something.
When we do a road improvement project, for example, typically we'll do curbing, we'll do handicap ramps, we'll do roadway improvements. Sometimes it goes beyond the limit of just the road itself. That, even though we get grants for that,
right,
that really addresses a certain area of the borough, but it's paid for under a capital improvement bond that the entirety of the borough funds. So yeah, this portion of the funding would be funded by the borough budget.
And so the grants are not available for this year, right? I think you and I spoke about that. It would be something that we could look into for the
Something we could
future.
look into
For the future. Okay.
And Lorraine, being very practical, is saying, we have this project, we want to close it out.
Right.
We'd really like everybody to be happy with the work that was done and be not adverse to paying a reasonable bill for the work that was done. If we can get through that in the remainder of the year and get all this squared away, then you can consider moving on in the future.
So when you have a contractor that, not a contractor, sorry, an engineer that comes in and charges excessive fees like that, that are not customary, and you had mentioned something in your talk too about there was some kind of you had some questions about how the process proceeded. Perhaps there should have been approval by the council, but it was approved by the administration or something like that. I mean, I guess this question is for Mr. Varga. Like, does the municipality have any legal recourse on something that was so mismanaged?
You just placed me in a very hard position because it's not an appropriate answer that I can provide during public session. It would be something that we would have to address during executive because it would involve litigation and litigation tactics. I'm going to have to ask you to take that for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Okay, so when was this program enacted, and when was the first bonding? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, when was all of the work done?
Between November of 2016 and April of 2017.
Okay, and that's both phases of the
Yes.
both bondings? Okay, and then, so all this work has been done, and it's been paid to the contractor and the engineer. And so this is just, we're trying to figure out how to recoup. What-
Practically speaking, the assessment portion of a project like this is done relatively soon after the construction is completed. Because everyone is aware of it. If I was your engineer at the time and I did this project, I would know what properties were included in it. I would have an idea in my head exactly what the dimensions were on those properties. I know it was a lot of properties, but you know where the contractor worked, you directed him to do it. You oversee it, you certify the dimensions, you present all that to the borough, goes to the tax assessor, goes to the tax collector, goes to the CFO, and the public hearing is held. Practically speaking, the public hearing probably should have been held in 2017 and in 2018. Probably should have been.
All right. Okay, so if we waive the engineering portion off the assessments, the bills will start going out right away?
At this point, what would happen is if you waive the engineering fees, it would have to be done by resolution, which would be presented to the mayor and council at the next session, at which point the committee on the sidewalk assessment would prepare a report, which would have to be thereafter adopted by the mayor and council, and then the bills would start going out.
Okay. And when was the engineering fees that we're picking up hit the budget?
These engineering fees have actually been paid.
Okay, so it's just through the bond?
So what we're doing now is just assessing based on the work that was done, so that the individuals who benefited from the project will be paying the fee. So it's essentially reimbursing the borough for the expense that they've already incurred.
All right, and that money will go to pay down debt?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
All right, just a suggestion, and I want to hear what the council thinks. If we pass a resolution waiving the fees so we can move this ahead, and then instruct Patrick into starting to look into if there's a legal ramifications that we can go after.
Mr. Mayor, I do apologize. I would just ask that nobody does comment on any legal ramifications or legal strategies you can ask me on during public session.
Okay. So, is everybody, what was everybody doing a resolution just to waive the engineering fees to move the assessment along? We had about 50 or 60 people, I guess. Was it 50 or 60, right? And that was the biggest complaint, was these engineering fees, correct?
It was approximately, I would say 50 people were at the meeting on Thursday night. The majority of people seemed not displeased with the project as it was completed, but were very upset about the assessment of engineering fees, especially because it was much later than the project was completed.
Okay. Councilman Carvelli, how do you feel about that?
Wait a
Councilmember Cracken?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable. People contracted for a project, they were given a cost, and then, you know, all of a sudden, the estimate that they were given is not what they were owed. I mean, I think it's reasonable that there are gonna be some unforeseen circumstances where there's gonna be an adjustment, you know, an adjustment. But this all should have been disclosed to them up front when this project was rolled out.
Okay. Councilwoman King?
I agree, they shouldn't have gotten an additional bill on top of what they were already told their fees were going to be, so it does seem unfair to the residents that they should have to pay additional money.
And I know Councilman Brennan is here, but he can't say anything because he had sidewalks done.
New sidewalks. I'm not going to say anything.
I'm not going to say anything.
Patrick, do you want to prepare the resolution? We want to do that now?
Absolutely. I mean, if we want to, we can, I don't know if we exactly are allowed to adopt a resolution on the fly. We need a motion to, I guess, a motion to waive the collection of engineering fees associated with the cost of the improvement project identified under identified by Ordinance 2017-20 and Ordinance 2016-09, but prior to the adoption of that ordinance, to that resolution, we would have to have a public hearing on it at the appropriate time when business matters are being covered later on in the agenda.
All right, so we'll do it under the regular resolutions?
Correct. We can. It'll be a separate item. I can word the resolution for the mayor and council, but we will have to have a public comment offer on it.
Okay. All right.
So right now, we're voting to amend the agenda to add this resolution.
Not right now. We're going to be doing that later on. When we get to the resolution aspects, we'll have a public comment on the resolutions on the consent agenda, and then we'll make a motion to introduce a new resolution, which I'll phrase, at which point we'll open it up for public comment, and thereafter the mayor and council will take a vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else for workshop? Anybody has anything to bring up? Okay. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the budget hearing. So Lorraine has a presentation for us. And I guess the council could step off and watch the presentation on the screen.
council is the public hearing on the 2022 budget. This is a budget that, with the guidance of mayor and council, we've been able to continue to provide the level of service that residents of Belmar are accustomed to receiving. We've upgraded, we continue to upgrade the infrastructure within the borough. We have increased the pay down of debt overall. We have stabilized operations across all the functions in the borough. That would be the general operations, the beach utility, and the water and sewer utility. And we've also stabilized the surplus in the borough. So at this point, basically what we have is a budget that provides for a slight decrease in the municipal tax rate. So this would be the third year, I believe, the third year in a row that the mayor and council has had either a zero or a slight decrease in the municipal tax rate, which results in a reduction of your taxes overall. The total average on a residential property, which includes school tax and county school and library, is $7,862.50. The average municipal rate then is $2,749.90, and that would only be the municipal portion of your tax bill. We've also provided a breakdown of the levy and the percentage of the total that each particular function makes up. So the county is 22% of your tax rate, municipal purposes is 35%, the library is 3%, and the local school tax is 41% of your total levy. We have appropriations are designated across a variety of functions and departments that service the borough, the residents of the borough, providing for everything from administration all the way down to what we call a reserve for uncollected taxes, and that's a statutory obligation that the borough is required to appropriate in each budget. And then finally, we have a breakdown of all our revenue categories. Basically, we are using additional surplus this year, but we were fortunate enough to replace surplus in 2021, resulting in our ability to appropriate additional funds for the stabilization of the tax rate in 2022. Our local revenues make up 23% of the budget. State aid is 2%. Uniform construction code is 1%. Shared services agreements, which has seen a considerable increase since we've added the EMS services to our shared service profile, actually, which is now expanding across additional municipalities, Lake Como, Municipal, Cedar, and Belmar will be participating in the EMS services. Our public and private revenues, which are basically grants, are fairly stable. We will be receiving an additional $290,000 in American Rescue Plan funds for this year. That's consistent with what what the borough received last year. Other special items. Then we have receipts from delinquent taxes, our local tax, which is our amount to be raised by taxation, is consistent with what it was in 2021, and the library tax has increased, but that's based on a formula that we are required to follow that's set by the state. So overall, the budget is increased, but some of that increase is due to the additional shared service agreement, the additional grants that we are expecting this year that are not a standard category of revenue. So overall, I believe that the mayor and council is pleased with what we've presented to them and to you. This is something that we have worked very hard on. Execution of the budget is important, and we feel that we're doing the best job possible to the residents of the borough. Thank you, Mayor.
Back up. You guys got questions? to the public. Does any of the council members have any questions for Lorraine or Bob Allison, our auditor? Jim, you got
Thank you, Lorraine, for all your support in preparing this very solid budget for the borough of Belmar, one that really puts our residents first and doesn't at all have any negative effects whatsoever on the outstanding services that our residents are used to receiving. You know, this budget appears to keep moving the borough forward to a firm financial standing. But I'm just curious, I think the public may benefit from you giving some insight into this. You know, we're obviously experiencing increased inflation. I think last month was the highest increase since sometime early in the 1980s. Are you comfortable in your preparation of the budget that the borough is protected against inflationary costs in the coming year?
In the preparation of the budget, we took into consideration the external forces that are in play and that are affecting our everyday operations. I can't guarantee that at some point in time we won't feel some effect if inflation continues to increase at 8.5% or higher per month. But I feel confident at this point that we have attempted to accommodate for all of the eventualities. I can't make a guarantee that we're not going to see some impact later on this year, but we've done our best to offset any of those eventualities, if you will.
Thank you for doing that. I think just one other question, because I know other members of the council have capital expenses. I know that you have to weigh those as a budget officer. You get requests from different department heads to support their capital needs, but you know, in your final overall budget, do you feel comfortable that this budget supports the capital expenses that our departments may have regarding replacing equipment so that they can continue to provide the exemplary services that they've been doing?
I believe that we have appropriately taken into consideration all the requests and prioritize them so that we can plan for the future. So if we can't get everybody everything they asked for this year, then we can attempt to provide them with that in the coming years. But what we've done is prioritize by department what their requests are, so that this way, again, we can appropriately plan. So yes, I think that we have accommodated all of those requests and some additional infrastructure projects that the borough is looking to accomplish this year. And then moving forward, we would have obviously different priorities, and a lot of it is going to depend on what the ultimate result is of the external forces.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I know I've heard Mr. Allison say several times over my time up here that creating a budget is more of an art, especially with all of the restrictions and mandates and whatnot. And the thing that always seems to pop out is the use of surplus as part of the budget. And you know, I guess as more of a refresher, I'd like to hear, you know, what the mindset is, or the thought, or the function of utilizing surplus in the budget. And this year and why the amount that is in there is in there. Also, just taking note that looking at the surplus from the previous years and that our total actual surplus appears to be growing, which is a good thing. So, does that clear our question?
The goal, Councilman, is to put the borough on a, if you will, a stable platform. And by appropriately using surplus is how we develop surplus in the future. So our execution of the budget, our anticipation of revenues, we're all on the conservative side. And generally, we try not to use more in surplus than we've replaced in the prior year. And I think we've accomplished that. And that would be our goal going forward, is to not use more than we've replaced in the prior year. Obviously, the benefit of having surplus is like having a savings account that you can go to access if an emergency comes up. So if an emergency arises, you want to be able to go and get that extra $1,000 from the bank rather than attempting to get a loan. That's the same thing that we do with surplus, is we use that to provide for eventualities that we may not have foreseen, or an emergency that could pop up over the next 6 months. Basically, that's where we're at with
Yeah, I would say that the use of surplus here is very appropriate. Over the prior year, our surplus increased about $1 million. We're using about $300,000 more in surplus this year than we did last year to balance the budget. We have a surplus percentage that's about 23% of our budget, which is getting to exactly where I think that the town should be at. Between 20 and 30% is a good number to have according to the bond rating agencies. 3 years ago, we were only down about 13-14%. So this surplus, to go back to your question, Jim, about inflation, well, we can't predict that. So I know Lorraine has worked hard on trying to put together this budget during a very, rocky time, probably as rocky as I've ever seen it as far as the economy goes. And if we don't have enough budgeted for certain items and we overspend, which could possibly be because of inflation, we know we have surplus to fall back on. We know that we have some money in reserves that next year won't be bad because of things that happened this year. We didn't always have that safety net, and we do now, and that's good. And hopefully we won't have to, and hopefully we will return all the surplus again and grow it again, just like we've been doing every year for the past 3 years.
So that's the point I think that I was getting at, is that the past several years, all the surplus money that you put into the budget has been returned to the surplus.
Has been returned and has been added to. Right. So, as you said at the beginning, that I say it's an art to put this together and not a science, and it is. You have to be conservative. You have to anticipate revenues that you hopefully will get more than, because that's what you want, and you will budget for expenses that you hopefully won't have to totally spend. The expense side of the equation is a little tricky right now because of inflation. So that is something which is of a concern to any financial planner right now. But again, if something goes awry, we have confidence that we have surplus that we can get into next year and not have a whole lot of pain.
Thank you.
Councilman Brennan? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you both for your hard work. And one thing I do appreciate is the conservative estimates on revenue. And I think that it gives me a sense of comfort knowing that, that's the way to go. I like doing that. And honestly, what can I say? A decrease in municipal tax rate, it's hard to argue with, right? So, you could have decreased it a little more. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your work.
I feel the same. I think you both have worked really hard on this. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of meetings, a lot of number crunching, which is one of my favorite things to do. So I appreciate all of your hard work and explaining it so that we all can understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. I mean, I know our budget went up for the year, and there's a lot of things that go into that. There's a few other employees that were added that we didn't have. One of the employees was, we added a dispatcher because of the overtime cost it was for putting police officers on the desk. And then the court had a part-time person that we made full-time. So I know we increased some of the employee costs, and I know like budgeting for the first aid and all that, but we get a lot of that money back. So if you just give us like a little overall, how we kept basic flat tax increase to what the budget went up to, just so the public understands.
How we were able to do it.
I know there's a lot that go into it, but just overall that,
I think a lot of the increases are offset by revenues because they are in the local agreements. So when you see the number go up, it's like, well, how come expenses so far up? Well, if you look on the other side of the equation, we do have additional revenues because we're getting in from all these different towns.
I think overall, we've tried to be as conservative as possible in anticipating revenue and but realistic in appropriating for expenditures. So,
I know it's a complex, I know it's a complex.
I don't want to get too technical in my explanation, but essentially that's what we're doing, is it's a balancing act.
Right.
And
I mean, it goes up, but we have extra revenues coming in from all different sources, and like Park Mobile and different things that bring our revenue in to offset the increases that happen.
Yeah, I mean, just in a real small example in the budget, you have construction code fees, which last year was budgeted 1.2, I think, and you brought in 1.7, this year budgeted 1.5. So it's $300,000 increase from last year's budget. That helps offset other expenses, and I'm sure based on projections of the code enforcement, that we're pretty confident. Right. Oh, the Marine, okay, the Marine, I'm sorry. So it's the Marine one. So in that case, the Marina has increased expenses, increased revenue, but offset by increased expenses. And both sides rise, but there's no net difference that has to be funded.
All right, thank you, and thank you, Lorraine, thank you for your really hard work. Bob, you also for keeping us on a steady course, so we really do appreciate it. With that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions from the public. Yes, sir.
Hi guys, Katrina Clapton, B Street. Thank you very much. This makes us feel good, makes me feel good anyway. I want to just kind of go back a little bit to debt. I'm like a debt freak. I hate debt. And a couple years ago, when you guys first got on, I remember you kind of combined all the outstanding bonds that were out there and kind of rolled them up into a big, and they weren't really bonds, they were notes, correct? And notes, kind of like an interest-only mortgage payment, all you do is pay interest. So we were paying just interest on a lot of these notes, right? And so when these were all kind of combined, they went into a more or less fixed mortgage payment. So now we have a fixed interest payment, right? So I looked on the budget, and I'm pretty excited about the fact that you're paying down our debt and our principal. If what I was looking at was correct on sheet 27, in 2021, on the principal payment, we paid $1,225,000 off of our principal. And this year, we're going to pay $1,285,000, which is a substantial amount, which I really appreciate. And also that, and then turn, in 2021, we paid $803,000 1.5 for interest, and this year coming up, we're going only, I mean, these numbers are only, I mean, only, but it's going down, the interest payment, to $749,000, which is also a great thing. I really appreciate that that was rolled into a fixed payment, because interest only does none of us any good, and now we all know that the interest rates are rising rapidly, and if we had been back with those notes and we'd be in really even worse shape than we are now. So, I mean, we're improving all of that, correct?
Yeah, I think you read some of my notes here, actually. But, you know, to piggyback on that, and if you really want to get excited, this will excite you very much, actually. When we could have continued the process of relative interest only, there is minimum payments have to be in there, so we'll just backtrack. When these people took office, we were paying down about $700,000 to $800,000 in principal payments. Now we are up to 1.3, so we're almost doubling what we're paying down. And when we rolled those notes into the fixed program back in December of 19, I just did a check with the financial advisor last week. I said, well, if we waited and did that now, what would be the change in interest cost because of what's happening in the market today? And it would be almost double. So that $749,000 you see, if we were waiting to do this now, we'd be budgeting over about $1.4 million in interest to do the exact same thing we did back in December of 19. So it was tremendous to say. I mean, no one could see this was happening, obviously, but because we acted as quickly as we did and stabilized the debt and stabilized the tax base at the time, and then grew the surplus since then, it puts us in a much stronger position here in 22 than we were in 2019 when we first got involved. So appreciate you commending them for making that move.
I commend you for making that move. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think also, Bob, too, you're talking about net debt, looking at the net debt for 2017, it was 1.248, here we are at 21, we're down into 1.123.
Yeah, the net debt percentage is a little lower than it was before. Obviously, you've had other things, you had fire trucks come up, you bought some land, but you're offsetting that by a more rapid pay down. So you have a larger valuation in the town. It's just like having a house with a $300,000 mortgage that was worth $500,000. Now it's about $300,000, but it's worth $1 million. So you have a lot more equity in the town versus the debt. Okay. Anyone else? John? John Walsh, you have your hand up?
No, that was sound in front of it.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was John's hand.
Ellen Zavian, Ninth Avenue. I have a question on the Park and Rec and how you determined, because I didn't see Park and Recreation up there, and particularly the skate park that will need to be worked on this coming year. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the problem is with budgeting, and I'll just start it off already. The problem is with budgeting is it's an unknown number until we get some of these companies to come in and tell us what they could do for us.
Actually, I was asking about Park and Rec specifically because I didn't see it in the
Well, that comes under capital, doesn't it? Our parks and
The
recreation.
skate park would be in capital.
That's all capital. Well, anything that we do for parks and rec is
Right.
capital, right?
Well, some of the programs are operational, so they are in the operations side of the budget.
Can you just specifically narrow down to, because I couldn't see in the budget, the separation of the total amount and then how much is salaries versus investment in Park and Rec?
Well, we have parks. We have several different park and recreation functions that fall under general operations. So for recreation as a whole, we have $137,000 in salaries and $52,000 in other expenses. We have the senior citizen programs, which have an apportionment of salary and wages, $1,000 versus expenses of $11,000. The Harbor Commission is budgeted at $440,000 for salaries and $137,000 for other expenses. Parks and Playgrounds is budgeted at $261,670 for salaries and wages, and other expenses at this point is $50,000. So that's essentially the Parks and Recreation. So all of the recreation functions that the borough undertakes fall within those categories.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Sandra.
Thank you. Sandy Caputo, Surf Avenue. Please tell me the name of the engineering firm for the sidewalk project.
The initial project? The original project?
Is there a different engineer for another project?
Well, there's the engineer who's been, Peter Avakian has been the engineer for the borough now.
Right.
And he was the engineer who was here. But the engineer for the program was Mazer Engineering.
What a surprise. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jerry.
Good evening, everyone. You didn't think you were going to get away with a budget presentation and not have me get up here. Actually, I wasn't going to get up here, but I had a couple hours before the meeting, so I figured, let me take a look at what's going on here. And I would like to put a more historical perspective on some of the things. There's not too many questions, but just really for the public and for you guys. The surplus is great, okay? Back in 2018, before this administration took over, the surplus was at $2.2 million. Today, we have a record-breaking surplus of $4.5 million, which is $2.3 million more than we had in 2013, or a 105% increase, okay? The mayor asked how are we doing all this? Well, the easy answer is, if you all remember, we all got a 20+ tax increase back in 2019. And we are all paying that 2019 20% tax increase every year. We paid it in 2019, 2020, 2021, and we're paying it this year, okay? It never went down, okay? So that's one of the reasons why the surplus has grown. Because, and I hope people understand this from a personal perspective, when you have more money than you need, like on your house budget, you really have to budget. I mean, it comes easy to budget when you know you have more money than you need to pay your bills. And that's what has happened here in Belmar. We've had more money than we needed, so the budget is really, in many ways, just a fiction, right? It's just numbers being put on a sheet, but it's not really related to anything in detail, okay? What bothers me a little bit, again, historically, in 2018, the general appropriation, or what I would like to call proposed spending, was $15.3 million. Today, the spending is $19.9 million. In 4 years, we've had an increase of $4.6 million in spending, okay? Or a 30% increase. Okay, so to me, that's significant because I don't have any idea where that money went. Right? I don't see it, it hasn't been explained, but all I know is my taxes aren't going down because spending is increasing. So it's like a tax and spend. I keep paying taxes, but more money is being spent every year. Right? And my question to myself is there ever going to be a day when the taxpayers get a break and we get our money back? Right? Or are we just going to keep spending, spending, spending? Okay, now.
Wait a minute, hang on.
Hang on one second, time out.
Oh, this is my comment section.
I know you.
This is my comment section. Please, I haven't asked a question yet. This is my comment. Okay. So that's my overall budget issue. Now I just have an easy one. The beach utility budget. I noticed in the 2021 page 32B, it just says salary and wages, other expenses. If you looked at 2019, it actually said first aid salary and wages. Because I was looking through the budget and I was like, where's the first aid, salary and wages? And I couldn't find it until I realized that that was left out. Probably a typographical error. But, I noticed it's the same as it was last year. You're budgeting $112,000 for salary and wages and $40,000 for other expenses, okay, which was the same as it was in 2020. That's for the beach utility, right? So we have $152,000 for first aid expenses to the beach utility. Then on our current fund, emergency services first aid, this is on sheet 15, we have $230,000 for emergency services first aid. The question I have is, at a prior hearing when we were talking about the EMS being provided to other towns, it was mentioned that I think eight full-time people had to be employed to do that. And I'd like to know, where in the budget are those 8 people? Where are those 8 salaries? Because I don't see it in the first aid part of the budget. Because if it's here, it should go up, but I don't see any increase in the first aid budget under the current fund. It's actually less than it was last year. So I'm wondering where those 8 positions were budgeted for. Because in prior years, I had made a request, an OPA request in 2020, where I was told that the first aid contribution at that year was $33,000, and the amount given for first aid charged to the beach fund was $48,819. So I'm wondering where those positions are in the budget. I think we should have seen an increase in the numbers. And then finally, my comment on the debt. It's great that you're paying off the debt. Debt doesn't bother me, okay? But I want to get one thing straight, because there's a misunderstanding, not on my part, but I believe on the borough's part. And I'm glad to see that the user-friendly sheet actually had this number on it. I want everyone to understand the gross debt as of 1/25/22, I'm just going to round it off, $44.1 million gross. Right? That's everything, school board, the utilities, and whatever. The net debt was $21.6 million. Okay, do you agree with that? That's in the budget, correct?
Since I prepared the budget, I would say yes.
Last year, from the annual debt statement, the gross debt was $31.8 million, which means from last year to this year, the gross debt went up $12.4 million, and the net debt from 20 to 21 went up, it was $18.6 million and went to $3 million. As I said, that doesn't bother me because it's being used for things that need to be done long-term in the town. It's a mortgage, right? But I'd like comparisons from apples to apples and oranges to oranges, okay? That's my point in bringing this up. I'm not concerned about the gross number of the debt. I just want the comparison. If we're comparing year to year, we need to compare net debt with net debt and gross debt with gross debt, okay? And those are my comments. Thank you.
you go back to 2019, when the gross debt was 57 million. But, what's it?
Brandon, I mean, you want to address some of the comments that he made about where we were and where we are now. I mean, back then I paid $2.50 for a gallon of gasoline, and we're up, so up $5. I mean, everything goes up, and I think you guys are doing a good job holding the line on what we have to have done and bringing in extra revenue and trying to meet the inflationary costs. So it's nice that, you know, you can get up here on your grandstand and tell us what we're doing wrong. But you guys are professionals. I have all the faith in you, and you guys have been doing a great job of keeping our town running in the right direction as far as the finances.
I would have to say, Mayor, that there's not a lot of fat in the budget. We are budgeting appropriately for the functions to provide the services that the borough residents require, and that this council wants to preserve for the benefit of the borough residents. I can only say that this is, in my opinion, and yes, I am biased because I prepared this document, this is a very responsible budget. And going forward, that would be our intent, is to budget appropriately and provide the services that residents need and that council wants to provide to residents.
And I'll just add two things. And one of the questions about the emergency first aid, that you'll find on page 22 and 22A, which is where the other towns, we have that in their local agreement, so the salaries are in that section that are offset by revenues. And I think I did in my comments about debt, did say that our debt level overall is relatively the same as it was. However, we are not growing debt. We are staying kind of static, but we're paying it down rapidly because we do know that since we came into office, or you came into office, that you needed fire trucks, you needed road improvement programs, you bought some land, and those things are not increasing our debt. They are really keeping our debt fairly similar, $19, $20 million net, because of the rapid pay down of the old debt. So we are, I would say, treading water when it comes to the net debt level. Of course, our equity in the town is growing, and if we were still temporarily financing, we wouldn't be at 20 or 21, we'd be at 23, $24 million. So we are offsetting these necessary new capital improvements with pay downs of old.
Bob, I think it might be helpful to review again your comments on the surplus, because a comment was made that we should reduce surplus, which.
Well, I think I said earlier that one of your intentions was to create some surplus. It was inadequate previously, so yeah, it has gone up $2 million, and it should have. And in my opinion, it should go up more actually, because I think you should have more of a buffer. So it's about having a buffer. It's not about just raising $1 without spending $1 and have nothing left over. You do need to have a responsible surplus to meet future needs, to meet the things we're going through right now with inflation. It just seems like, if it's inflation, if it's Sandy, if it's COVID, it just seems like every 3 years, 2-3 years, something happens, right? So to not have anything to fall back on, what are you going to do? Well, then you're going to have to raise taxes constantly every year, not just once every 3 or 4 years, which you do have to do to meet inflation, but then you try to make it steady after that. So, if your surplus was 50% of your budget, then maybe I'll say, you know what, you guys got a lot of surplus, but not at 23%. And when it was at 13, that was too low.
So reducing surplus and going back to that 13% level could potentially have negative consequences on the borough.
It could.
Okay, is there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Gilbert.
I don't have too many, any numbers here. I just want to talk about some of the words that have been used here. Councilman Carvelli, you used the word art as far as the budget goes. Very good word, like compliments. It's very artful. Now about Not the word inflation that's been thrown around here. Inflation, in fact, as far as I understand it, is a tax. It's a hidden tax. It comes from banks and loans and loans and loans and loans and everything, and it finally hits the public, as we're noticing now. And I got a really bad feeling about where this is going, as far as, I have a feeling as we haven't seen anything yet. Inflation. Now, this surplus we're talking about, we have $2 million some dollars more in the surplus than we did.
And you
It's
did 4
gone
years
up.
ago, you did 4 years ago.
So isn't the new figure inflated dollars? So the dollars, the $2 million more dollars that we have now than we had, of the surplus dollars are worth X amount less than the dollars that were in there, correct?
Well, and if you're gonna do a time value of money and go back 3 years, maybe it's not a real 2 million, maybe it's a real 1.8. I mean, you could do that, if you, but I mean, as far as, actual non-economically massaged numbers, it is up to.
1.8 is a nice figure. It might be like 1.4 maybe.
I don't know, I'm not an
Right,
economist.
it's hard to figure it. And as far as equity in a house, selling, let's say, a $300,000 house for $500,000, same thing, correct? The dollar is worth X amount less. So, we got nothing here. But let me address the council now for a little bit. Over the last year, since you've taken over, Mr. Mayor and council, I've noticed all over the town, more and more town vehicles. So we're paying down, you're saying to me and us, we're paying down our debt, but we're using an unusual way of doing it. We're spending more. That's interesting.
Well, I can tell you this, we don't have any more vehicles. Have we replaced some? Yes, we have. We have replaced some of the older stuff that is not repairable anymore. But we don't have any more. It's the same amount we've always had.
I'll go with that for now. But, one other thing, I didn't catch it. How much is the school budget? How percentage-wise? How much is the school budget?
41%.
41.
That's correct.
I hate that school. But it's gonna be on our back forever, I know that. But, that's all I got to say for now. Thank you.
Anyone else on the budget?
That's county.
Yes, Bob?
Thank you. Bob Lynch, 316 9th Avenue, Belmar. I'm always interested in revenue outside of property taxes, because those are the things that help property taxes. And there were a couple of things that kind of stood out to me. Under shared services, last year our revenue from shared services was about $390,000, and this year it's $760,000. So it's plus $270,000.
That's correct. That's
Is
as
that-
a result of the EMS, taking on the EMS shared services.
So those are the monies that are going to be paid to us by Lake Como, Manasquan, and Seeger.
That's correct,
So that's the bulk of that.
yes.
And then within that shared service, where does police? Is police in that shared services too?
Not in that, it's in, there is
Shared services
a
with dispatch.
revenue line on sheet.
Nothing new with that.
No, there's no change in that figure, I don't believe. Just bear with me 1 second, all right?
I mean, the $270,000 we're bringing in on shared services, we're going to use that, we're going to spend that on salaries and operations.
It's offset,
Yeah, just offset with the first aid. Okay. And the police is, with Lake Como's deal, they pay 25% of our police cost or something like that, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, by contract. Okay.
Yes.
And there are two other things outside of, or other revenue streams. One was, pilot programs. Those revenues outside of property taxes, right? And
Well, they're
payment in lieu of taxes.
In lieu of taxes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, we budgeted $208,000 last year, and it's going up a little bit, $224,000 this year. It's only going up because the contract probably says every year they may pay a little more.
That's
Is that
correct, yes.
And then, how many properties are in the pilot program?
I would have to get back to you with the exact number. I believe it's somewhere on approximately 25.
25 properties?
Well, because there are condos.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, each condo is listed as an individual property.
Okay. And then are there any apartment buildings that would be on your pilot programs too?
I would have to get back to you. I don't know the specifics of the programs.
You know, pilot programs are always thought of as bad, good, you know, a way to get revenue, because it all comes directly to the borough. They don't pay anything to school tax, they don't pay anything to county tax, right?
I think about 5% goes to the county.
Okay. Part of the pilot agreement that the county offers to towns. And then concession rentals. That's another source of revenue outside of property taxes. And it went down this year like 30,000. Is there any explanation for that, or what are the concessions that are included in that concession money, which is
I can tell you.
350,000?
The two concessions on the boardwalk, we had to go out and rebid, and they didn't bid them as high as the ones that left. So they have increases in them, but I think this year they were down from last year when the two concessions left early. So then we have to rebid them.
Okay.
I don't think the bid went up as high as what they were paying. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Are the concessions on the beachfront, are they all the towns, or do we have to share that with the beachfront, the concession money?
I believe the Taylor Pavilion, through the courts, carved out the Taylor Pavilion. It's not, they claimed that it wasn't part of the beach utility.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the court cases before we got here,
Yeah.
that they were trying to pay for it through the beach utility, and the judge ruled that no, that can't be paid for through the beach utility. It has to be paid through borough taxes, and so we get to collect that revenue.
And, isn't the other concession the Marina Grill, 9th Avenue Pier, the golf?
Now, are they separate line items coming in? Because that is, I don't know how I know they have to pay from a borough property, so I don't know where they are in the budget.
I don't believe that comes into us through the concession line. I would have to double check that and get back to you.
Because I was just trying to see where that, you know, like 380,000, and the beachfront ones are, I don't know what we get for those, but they're not anywhere near that revenue. So there's a few other concessions we have.
I can get you the specifics. I don't have everything with me tonight, but I can get you the specifics.
Okay.
And then you were asking a question about where the Lake Como police contract revenue, it's on page 10, proceeds from police services contract.
Okay, so it's in a separate line?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But it sounded like that number was low for services, that, you know, other services, I guess, other shared services. All right. And then I think somebody said that the cost of the sidewalks was $645,000. The actual amount of money we paid to the contractor who put the sidewalks in.
I believe that's what the engineer said.
Okay. Oh, that's right. So that's going to be revenue that we're going to get this year. We're just going to pay those bills. I'm going to pay my bill. So does that show up anywhere, the 645,000?
That's there's going to be a special assessment bill that you're going to get, so that's basically going to come back to the borough as a special assessment, and then that would be recouped, and we would be able to appropriate that in a future year's
Where would it
budget.
go in, where would it go in the revenue line?
Well, it's not there now because there's no agreement yet. So you can't budget something that you don't, the state won't allow you to budget something which you don't have a document that says you're gonna get the money, or something you got in the previous year. This is still being discussed, so when that money comes in, it'll come in something probably won't burn it, but it'll be reserved against, probably offset as a reserve to pay debt service, because it's, the money spent to do the project was done, whatever, 16, 17, and that was paid for through a bond.
Yeah, there would have been a bond that was brought out first to pay for the contractor, and then now we're gonna pay that bond off of the contractor.
That's correct.
All right, thank you, guys.
Anyone else? Yes, George?
George Comitasso, on 3rd Avenue. First of all, I always repeat myself, I have so much respect for our service people, but on behalf of the school, I love that school. I worked there, I graduated with Eddie. I worked there for 5.5 years. The first 2 years, I didn't even get benefits. My check was nothing. I drove the school bus. Mr. Wilson got me benefits. The teachers there, I don't know, they were 20% stayed past their time, especially with the Spanish students, not just them, but I love Belmar School.
That had nothing to do with our budget, but we'll take it. Anybody else for the budget?
41%.
All right, April, seeing none?
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So now we have a resolution, it's Resolution 107 to amend the 2022 municipal budget. We'll be amending the budget, and there will be another hearing on the amendment at the July 12th meeting. So can we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-107?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Yes,
Okay. Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
And just so it's clear, we'll be adopting the budget on July 12th, correct? The whole budget. Okay. All right, so we'll move on. April, do you have any petitions?
Yes, I did receive one petition. It's from Linda Sharkis and John Walsh, entitled Belmar Residents Against Overdevelopment, and you've all received a copy.
Thank you. Approval of minutes of June 8th.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 8th meeting? Motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Abstain.
Okay, report to council. Councilman Carvelli?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. The planning board met on 6/1. There was one application. It was for change of use. That asking that was actually to take over the barbershop next door down on 12th or 13th Avenue on Main Street. The Harbor Commission also met. There was a lot of discussion about fuel dock repairs, and I was also surprised to hear about, I guess, the disrepair of the pilings and some of the docks and stuff like that. So, more to come on that. I don't know if we're going to discuss anything more about the fuel docking today, but and then there was the Finance Committee. They met last week. We're still awaiting appraisal on the water and sewer system. I think the big thing we're waiting on now is, I guess the town has to come up with a plan for removing the lead water services. And so the big thing there is the sewer, the water infiltration, groundwater infiltration into the sewer. That's going to be costing us a bunch of money. So seems like we should have something more on that in the coming months. So those are my boards, and that's my report.
Thank you. Council President McCracken.
Thank you, Mayor. Last night, there was a Juneteenth concert held in the Teller Pavilion, which was sponsored by Belmar Recreation and the Belmar Library. It was a well-attended event. It was not only a concert, but there was an educational component to that. So I want to once again thank Lewis and the Recreation Department, Barry, for putting on a delightful evening. Also, I know that we've had a meeting since the last primary election, but now that results are more or less official, I'd like to congratulate everybody who's a successful candidate for their party. It's not an easy move putting your name on the ballot, I just want to thank everybody who did that. It's part of our democracy, whether it's for county committee or county race or municipal race or whatnot. So congratulations to all the successful candidates. And then obviously just a couple days ago we had Father's Day, and I wanted to just recognize all the fathers in this room who are watching. I hope you had a nice weekend.
Thank you. Councilman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no report.
Councilwoman King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had an ADA meeting. I met with the ADA group on last week, and a couple things that we just wanted to confirm were just that there are movie mats at every beach, and that there are beach wheelchairs also at every beach. That's confirmed on the website. And then there wasn't a whole lot else. The next meeting is not going to be until August 18th. Recreation, the plaque dedication is moved to this Saturday. Do we know what time? 9:30 in the morning, and that will be at the plaque dedication and the baseball game following that. And also the movie, the Sandlot movie, will be that evening, and that's all going to be at the baseball field. I was going to mention the Juneteenth event last night. That was a very nice event. We were there last night. Thank you so much again to Recreation and the library. Pretty much all the sign-ups for summer recreation are either full, or you can still, I think, junior guards might still be available, but all the other kids' summer programs are pretty much full, which is great. And then just a couple of things around the schools. Belmar Elementary, they graduated their 8th grade class on the 16th. Last day of school last week was the 17th. They had some great school presentations on train safety, bicycle safety, and ocean safety, which is school-wide presentations. Belmar's extended school year starts July 5th till August 4th. And they're having a summer enrichment program, lots of programs for kids. If you have kids or know kids that want to be involved, I saw art and dance and fishing and photography. I mean, really, really good looking programs that I'm going to take advantage of myself, I hope. From the week is August 8th to the 11th. St. Rose High School, the girls and boys track and field won their sectionals for non-public B high school. So congratulations to them. And then the boys won the state championships for spring track and field, which is great. St. Rose High School staff is integrating a stream. They're doing a stream professional development, which is science, technology, religion, engineering, art, and math, and we'll be integrating that into their curriculum for all their classes. And then St. Rose Grammar School news, the 8th grade graduated. Last day of school last week was June 9th. Not a whole lot else happening right now at St. Rose. So pretty much on summer hours. Everybody's on summer hours for the summer. And then that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to congratulate Lewis on a great program last night. I know they're not easy to put together. And one thing I have to say about the Belmar Library, all year long, every different culture, they always have something going on to recognize all the different cultures. And, you know, we live in a diverse community, so it's nice to see that the library puts all that on. Thanks, Lewis. I attended the Belmar Elementary School graduation. One thing I have to say about that, I mean, I got to say that the school board are new superintendent, Mr. Alvarez, all the staff down there really do an excellent job. And it was the first time I was in the new auditorium, which they refurbished all the auditorium, and the school really looks nice. It's a shining star of our community. I know Mr. Dilberger has a different opinion, but I think it's the shining star of our community. The kids were well received, and you know, I want to congratulate our 8th grade students going into high school. Like Mrs. Kinney said, Field of Dreams is this Saturday. It looks like the weather is going to hold out for us. We had to cancel it twice because of weather, so it looks like the third time we'll be able to present the field and present the flag. We have the laser light show on and fireworks on July 1st, continuing with our 125th year anniversary. The laser light show will be done from the Taylor Pavilion before the fireworks show, so it should be a nice event. If anybody's been by Silver Lake, the 2 new fountains that we have in there are lit up fountains now, so we're able to change the different colors for the different things that we want to do. If it's red, white, and blue for 4th of July, they'll be able to change the colors, but the fountains really do look nice in Silver Lake. And we're going to have a refurbished fountain. It's not lit up, but we're going to do one in Silver Lake. So, Lake Como. So that should be up and running hopefully this week, right, Bill?
We're still waiting on prices to come back as far as electric service.
Oh, okay.
And, the availability on the panels and the boxes, so it might be a little bit longer than yesterday.
All right, but we're working on that. And I just got to say, I know I brought it up at the top of the meeting, and it's never easy for our first responders. You know, they do everything that possibly can be done to try to keep everybody safe. I have to commend them on the job that they did. There was 10 people in the water. They were able to get out 9. They didn't realize there was the 10th one in there. They worked tirelessly to get the last one. Unfortunately, it didn't end in a good result, but I really have to commend them on the job that they did. They really were in the water right away and rescued a lot of people. So. And I think that's all I have. So we'll move on to public session on any of the resolution items. Patrick, we're going to do that one separate.
Correct.
Okay, if anyone would like to speak on one of the resolutions listed on the agenda, please step forward, state your name and address.
Yes, Mr. Ira. Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Kramer, go ahead.
Eugene Kramer, 4th Avenue. I hope I'm not talking out of step here. Does this include all the resolutions on the sheet here? Okay. I have a question on resolution number 2022-112. And this is a liquor license for Flames for the period ending June 30th, 2023. The liquor license has got some unusual wording here. It says alcoholic beverage license with broad package privilege. Can somebody tell me whether there's any other establishment in Belmar that has a broad package privilege?
I think all the Class C, right, Patrick? If I'm not mistaken, that the Class C is broad, that they have either bar or packaged goods. So I think there's a few of them around town.
There's certainly a few of them around town. The exact ones which have a specific license, I'd truthfully have to check. I would be surprised if, oh my God, the white banquet hall on the corner That was just subject to the amendments to the redevelopment. That probably has a broad package, package privilege. I would have to double check and review each license to give you a definitive answer, but I would be shocked if it was the only one.
That's the reason I'm asking the question. What specifically, in other words, we have other, on the agenda here, there are other liquor licenses for consumption. But this one particularly uses the word broad package privilege.
So the broad package privilege is actually a liquor license, which you're no longer, I'm going to use this term kind of carefully, permitted to issue new ones of. So the amount of liquor license every township has, there are certain kinds. There's distribution and consumption, and it's regulated by the population. Now, every township or every municipality, at one point prior to the amendment to the various regulations, were all allotted a certain amount of various kinds, because the borough, for example, only has less than 8,000 people in it. So under the current regulations, it would be permitted to have 2 liquor licenses for consumption and only 1 liquor store. That's all the amount of licenses that would be permitted to exist. But however, because they're grandfathered in and they have previously or prior existing liquor licenses, they're allowed to be transferred from person to person. The reason why Flames has the broad package is because at some point there was a transfer of a liquor license where most likely they purchased it from either the borough being capable of holding it in pocket, or alternatively from another individual who previously owned it.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I do understand the way that things go. These licenses, you know, they've been selling liquor in Belmar for years, but there's a limited number of licenses, and they are bought, sold, and traded.
Correct.
Okay. Now, a year or so ago, this Flames restaurant had a license that was not broad package, did not have broad package privilege. I'd like to know what the actual difference in operation is. Does this mean that if you have a retail consumption license, yes, you can sell individual drinks to customers?
Correct.
Now, if they have a broad package privilege, can they sell bottles across the bar?
Correct. The answer is yes. I don't know if they would, but they are permitted to operate as a liquor store.
Okay. Now, that's a change in operation, isn't it?
No, it's not, 'cause it's still considered a restaurant establishment or inherently related bar use. So there's been previous arguments made where a restaurant which was zoned in an area where liquor stores were prohibited would similarly have a broad package privilege, and the arguments made in court was that it violated the municipal land use law because it was a use which was not authorized. However, the court declined to accept that argument because a liquor license is a liquor license in its eyes. Whichever license you have can be associated with your use, provided that the primary function of the operation is not selling liquor, but instead is a restaurant establishment which specializes in food production.
Okay. I guess I would like to know, do we have another, in order to have a basis of comparison, do we have a facility here in town, an establishment that has this broad package privilege?
It's listed in any of the licensing that we issue, but I know from the state ABC, Broad C allows that, whether it's in one of the regulations that we put in, right, April?
Yeah, I think the real question is he just wants. I have to check. I can review it and have an answer for you at the next council meeting. We can determine what the classifications of the licenses are and if there is any other ones, but I can't give you the answer right now because I don't actually have every license in front of me, and I don't want to lie to you and say yes or no.
Yeah, this is the preferred, this is the best type of license, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, it's.
Yeah, okay, in other words, the owner can cheat the tax man. In other words, because the tax man doesn't know whether they sold individual drinks or whether they sold bottles of alcohol.
Not necessarily true, because they can't, everything has to be accounted for. By way of example, most restaurants that have the broad C, if they sell, we'll use Bud Lights, $2 Bud Lights, they're not going to sell a six-pack of Bud Lights for $4. They're going to sell a six-pack of Bud Light for $12, because then they're going to be losing income. And they'll do the same thing with a bottle of, say, Tito's, where Tito's for them, for everybody else will cost, was it $18, I think, at the liquor store, maybe 20, but they'll probably charge $5 a shot, so they'll calculate how many shots are in a bottle. I don't know, we're going to say 20 because easy math, and they'll probably charge you $200 for the bottle if you really want that bottle. But I mean, it would be a business decision, but every cost would have to be itemized. They can't make it up as they go, or they'd be committing tax fraud.
Exactly. That's what I meant, though. Taxman doesn't know whether you poured the individual drinks out of the bottle or whether you sold a sealed bottle. But that's not really what my concern is here, is that for a reason, this license was transferred, okay? In other words, we have two liquor licenses on the agenda tonight. One of them is Jack's by the Tracks, and it appears that is the same owner as Flames. But there's two different licenses. One has broad package privilege, the one that's now being associated with Flames, and the Jack's by the Tracks liquor license there that is not going to have broad package privilege.
That's correct.
Why did and it appears that the owner of these licenses is the same entity, okay?
I think they're both broad C. I don't know if it's listed in R. Jack's by the Tracks one. Oh, no, wait a minute, that's a season, that's a season. Sorry, that's a season. No, my mistake. Yeah, that's different, that's a seasonal license. So I misspoke.
Yeah, I guess my question is why have the liquor license with the broad package privilege? What was the intent of having that at Flames instead of Jack at the Tracks? I mean, what's the difference in the actual license?
Value is a difference, what it brings in. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's the owner of the entity's choice, but they also has to be in an available liquor license for them to obtain. Now, the entity, the owner of Flames and the owner of Jack's at the Tracks, he could have sat there and made the business decision, because these liquor licenses are certainly not cheap, especially when you're purchasing it from another person, and realize that it just wouldn't have been an economic investment. I don't know, I can't speak for him, but that was the liquor license that he was able to obtain. That's the liquor license that he duly applied for. That's the liquor license that he gets. There's no reason to prohibit him from having it, and the liquor licenses are exceptionally well regulated by the ABC.
Okay, I guess where my concern is here, and there's also distribution licenses, you know, one for Hanley's, and I guess at the last meeting we had the, what was it, Little Red Barn, they got their license renewed there also. Say for instance though that Flames, and by the way, none of these resolutions here seem to actually spell out hours of operation. They do spell out playing of music and so on, but it specifies hours there. But none of them seem to really outline or nail down hours of operation. And what I mean by operation is the actual sale of liquor. Now, Hanley's may close at, which is a packaged goods store, may close at 10 o'clock at night. Does that mean then if Hanley's is closed, can I go to Flames, which might be open till 2 o'clock in the morning, and buy my packaged goods there?
Yes, that is what that means. You would just be paying more, which is why I would go back to the Bud Light example of, rather than paying, what is it, Bud Light, $6 maybe at a liquor store, I'm not entirely certain, but you'd be paying, if it's a $2 Bud Light, you're spending $12. Most likely it's probably like $5, so you're realistically spending $30 for a 6-pack of beer if that's what you really want.
Okay, and so this broad package license would allow packaged goods to be sold up to, I guess, last call or whatever the facility, the place has.
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. Well, okay, this actually gets more complicated than that. We do have a sidewalk cafe permit in town, and these appear, there's no real mention of the permit here that was issued to Flames or Jack at the Tracks for that matter. The licensed premises has been moved out into the street. Does that mean now that we can have, in addition to selling individual drinks, does that mean now that Flames would be able to sell sealed bottles out on the streets of Belmar?
It would be, sorry, the bug, but they would be compelled to sell it within the confines of the patio section. So the way Belmar's ordinances are written is that you can get an exception when you apply for the permit, provided that there's, I believe it's 3 or 4 feet from the terminus of the, I would essentially say, call it as a barrier or the furthest most point of the tables. Ordinance requires 6 feet, but it left it in the discretion of the zoning officer at the time whether or not relief should be granted to the form of 3 or 4 feet. When Flames did apply for the permit, they did request the shorter end of it, and they were granted the permit at that time. So they would be permitted to sell liquor in accordance with their liquor license in that extended area, yes.
Okay, I don't have any more questions on this. It's just that I feel that things have been extremely complicated with the extending out the sale of alcoholic beverages into the streets of the town to all hours of the day. If that's what they want to do, I mean, that's what it is. Also, aren't we going through, wasn't the state just passed a law the other day to allow carriages? In other words, people be able to buy alcoholic beverages and then mount a bus or a carriage. Actually, I think it's a pedal.
It's a pedicab.
Pedicab,
yes,
yeah.
I know exactly which statute you're talking about. There are various conditions that have to be satisfied. First, whether or not pedicabs are lawful within the municipality. Subsequent thereto, there are significant restrictions, but the one thing that exists part of this statute is a municipality, if you have a choice, you either authorize pedicabs or you don't authorize pedicabs. If you authorize pedicabs, this is not on. I apologize. Can everybody hear me a little better now? So the municipality has a choice underneath the statute. You either choose to authorize pedicabs or you don't authorize pedicabs. If you choose to authorize pedicabs that exist within the municipality per the statute is prohibited from barring or not permitting the consumption of single-use alcoholic beverages while on a pedicab, provided that the operator of said pedicab is 21 years of age or older, is not drinking, seat belts are provided, and there's one other So that one other restriction, I apologize, I'm lacking on my memory, I don't remember it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
What else on the resolutions?
Can I have a motion to close the public session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on consent agenda number 1?
Motion.
Second?
Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
Okay, next is consent agenda number 2. Councilman Brennan will abstain. Can we have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on consent agenda number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
Now we want to add that one?
Yeah, so the way it's gonna work is I'll read the resolution, then we need a motion to amend the agenda to include the resolution. That has to be first, second, there has to be a vote of council. Thereafter, a public comment section has to be offered. After the public comment, then you, mayor and council would vote to either approve or reject the resolution as read into the record. All right. So this is a resolution to waive the assessment and collection of engineering costs associated with Ordinance 2016-09 and Ordinance 2017-20. Whereas the Borough of Belmar in 2016 adopted Ordinance 2016-09 and in 2017 adopted Ordinance 2017-20, parentheses collectively referred to as the ordinance, collectively referred to as the sidewalk assessment ordinances, close parentheses, and whereas a preliminary hearing on the collection and imposition of the assessments listed on the sidewalk assessment ordinances was heard on June 16, 2022, and whereas the mayor and council desire to waive the collection of all engineering costs associated with the sidewalk assessment ordinances, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the Borough of Belmar does hereby authorize the waiver of the collection of engineering fees as costs associated with the sidewalk assessment ordinances. Be it further resolved that the mayor and council instructs the commissioners of assessment to exclude from its calculation and report the total cost of engineering fees associated with the sidewalk assessment ordinances. Motion and a second.
Can I have a motion to amend the agenda to include that resolution?
Motion.
Okay, Councilman Brennan?
Abstain.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
And then we'll have a public session on this resolution. If anyone would like to speak on it, step forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public comment?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And can I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
And I'm sorry, do we have a way of just identifying the number of this resolution?
It'll be 2022-116.
And it's a resolution to waive the assessment and collection of engineering costs associated with Ordinance 2016-09 and Ordinance 2017-20.
A motion to adopt the resolution?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Brennan stands. Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
We don't have any ordinances, so now we'll just move on to public session.
Yes, Linda.
Linda Sharkus, 4th Avenue. I'd like to take a few minutes to give you an idea of the people here in the audience, what our petition was about.
All right, March 11th B. And I'm just real quick, I just have to put a little something on the record, because I did read the petition, and the petition appears to pertain to a pending application for the zoning board. Am I correct on that?
It's in general, but it does reference a project on 12th Avenue.
Yes, the issue is because it's referencing an application that's before the zoning board. So to allow testimony on it, now you're certainly entitled to talk, but I just have to put this on the record for the mayor and council not to answer it. It's not their purview, it's not within this mayor and council's forum. So the applicant for that 12th Avenue has the right under the municipal land use law to apply for variances from the master plan one of the proofs that they have to demonstrate is that there isn't a substantial deviation and additionally to conformity with the neighborhood scheme. So when you have comments and concerns about a pending application, you have to go to the zoning board as opposed to the mayor and council, because the mayor and council's hands are effectively tied. They have zero authority to tell the zoning board what to do, and the applicant has a statutory right to apply for the variance relief to have a deviation from the requirements of the master plan and the existing ordinances as drafted by the borough, and the borough cannot prohibit or restrict that, right? It's called field preemption. It's preempted by the legislature.
We understand.
Sure, yeah. So we will, we're going to talk about it, then you guys don't have to respond if you're not legally allowed to. But, so Linda's gonna read it out loud.
So, the undersigned of Belmar have joined together to express our concern with overbuilding in residential areas. To date, there are no 4-story buildings east of Main Street. However, a 4-story building is being constructed on 9th and Main with apartments and first-floor commercial space. And a 4+ story condo building is proposed for 12th Avenue to replace a 3-story hotel. We believe that the intention of the master plan is clear, and these types of development should not be approved. These types of structure place a burden on infrastructure, traffic, light, shadows, wind, noise, and encroaches on neighbors' privacy. In summary, based on the master plan, no 4-story structures are permitted in R, that's residential districts. These high, dense buildings detract from the general character of the borough. Would you want a 4+ story building in your neighborhood, or would you prefer a lower density neighborhood for you and your family to enjoy? We ask the members of the community to
So
join
we
us.
had about 314 signatures. It was on change.org. We just wanted to let you guys know for future projects that maybe you have to decide on, especially between Main Street and Ocean Avenue. I mean, there's an empty lot on our block, all 3 of us, 11th Avenue. I mean, 2 houses, well, it was 1, and then now it's 2. I mean, that would really suck for that to happen there. I mean, so there were some comments that were online. I don't like the direction the town is going in. We are a small, quaint town, not Hoboken. I own a house in Belmar. I plan to retire here. I bought in this town because it was quaint and not overdeveloped and busy like other beach towns. And generally the consensus is to keep the small town feel. So this was just to let you guys know that there are many people like the 2 of us that are not here and do not come to the meetings that have the same feeling.
And all I will say is just when those applicants do come, please go to the planning board,
Oh, we
please go
do.
to the zoning board.
We
because
do, and no one listens to us. So we are in a last-ditch effort to try to stop things like this from happening in the future.
And I understand, it's just that the mayor and council can't, if you
Well,
have,
they
it's
can do
those,
stuff in the next project.
no, they
So-
can't. If it's an application for the zoning board or the planning
So
board.
they can appoint better people to the zoning board, I guess. They appoint
And they have
them.
statutory terms right now, so
Right.
it's a very,
So thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Randy Brazell, 11th Avenue. I appreciate your comments, and I understand the difference between a zoning board and what the council does. But I would like to talk about the zoning board. I'm a person that doesn't get intimidated very easily, and I've discussed this with you, Mayor Walter. It is totally intimidating to go before that zoning board and make comments. It is not run the way that a board, it is not a respectful place to be. You get belittled, you get talked over, you cannot get your point across without being either yelled at, scolded at. It's just an inappropriate thing. So, yeah, it would be great to go to the zoning board. You go there and you are totally frustrated when you walk out of there because nobody is listening. Nobody is listening. I understand why you go before a zoning board, but there's still a framework that you're supposed to work within. And you sit there and you sort of scratch your head when the people on the board are asking or not asking questions, that clearly should be asked. So I implore you to maybe look at some of those videos, read some of those transcripts to see what your board is doing, because it's really inappropriate. It really, really is. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else? Yes, John?
I got the 14th Avenue Boulevard.
John Walsh, B Street. First thing, thank you for fixing the hole and for putting up the chin-up bar. The chin-up bar in the hole is just not for me, it's for the whole town.
I know it is.
All right. And then the second thing is, as I sit here, this is just an observation. I sit here listening, someone saying what a great job you guys are doing, and what a great job they're doing. Well, first of all, they're doing their job. And if they're doing a great job, they're supposed to be doing it. You know, that's what they get paid for. You guys get paid nothing, and you try your best, and we're all here. You know, I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't want a better job. But when I listen, what happens, I think, and this is in this country, is that these people have their view, you have your view, and if you don't agree, it's whatever. They did away with this thing called the fairness doctrine, where you would have to give, you know, you like them, I like them, and then there's, you know, okay, we both heard your points. But, I mean, I listened to Katrina's view, I'm like, okay, that's your point. And then Jerry gave his view, right? And then, you know, I heard you say it was grandstanding. That's democracy. That's democracy at its finest. We're here, we're airing our things out. We all want a better Belmar, but we all, you know, we have a different view on it. And that's all I got to say. I'm just saying, you know, let's be civilized with this. You know, I don't agree with you, we can still be civil. That's all I got to say about that.
Anybody else? Yes, Louis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Louis Polito, Belmar Public Library. I want to thank you for those who were able to come last night's event. It was a great event. I especially want to thank my partner in crime, Barry Dragu, at the Recreation Department. It was a pleasure working with him to put together this really great event that turned out to be very well. So thank you to Barry. I'm sorry he wasn't here to hear it from me directly, but I'll tell him myself. I wanted to announce the next sizable event. It's going to be interesting also. Is a book launch event. A local, a Jersey Shore-based photographer has created a book. He's launching very soon, and we are one of 4 launch parties along the Jersey Shore. The book is Sand, Sea, and Rescue by photographer Gregory Andrus. I have a flyer here for that. And the book launch event is July 5th, Tuesday, July 5th, at Taylor Pavilion at 6 p.m. So what's so special about this book is it's Sand, Sea, and Rescue, Lifeguards of the Jersey Shore. And he went up and down the Jersey Shore from Atlantic City all the way on up through here and photographed lifeguards in their element and made the stories about them. And it's a multimedia book because now for each one, there's a barcode or like one of those little QR codes, thank you, where you can like scan it and it'll bring you to like a multimedia thing online where you will hear that lifeguard story or event. It's a great one, and what's cool about it is it includes several Belmar lifeguards. So we're having the event here. His name is Gregory Andrus. I have the flyer. I invite everyone to come because we're going to be reaching out to all the lifeguards up and down the Monmouth County shore. Our library was able to work with him and be one of 4 main launch parties up and down the shore. There's one going down over south of Atlantic City. There's one going on over in Long Beach Island. And then they're doing another one in Point Pleasant for Ocean County. And then finally, we're the Monmouth County launch party. So we're going to be inviting lifeguards around. So welcome everyone to come to that. And I'll have this all up on the website as well.
John, have a copy of that?
Yes, we'll have that. Good. Okay. Now we also, as I want to mention, is that we have 2 new story times for kids aged in kindergarten through 2nd grade. Mondays at 10 a.m. and Thursdays at 3 p.m. in addition to a regular toddler story time. So for anyone with those young kids that need something to, stories read to them, come on down to the library, we will read to them. And we have some great activities for them too. And finally, the next summer concert is Tommy B and the Deep Blue Sea on July 26th at 6 p.m. Tuesday night. So be there and enjoy it, just like that. You know, recently we had the Danny White's Beach Music Studios band. Joni was there, right there. Weren't they great?
They were wonderful.
They were wonderful.
Great.
Great.
It was a beautiful day. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so just so you know, all these programs, all these activities are free and open to the public, so come on down. With that, thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
And just a little plug for Danny White, the Beach Music Rock Band, they're going to be in the plaza July 1st. That's Friday night, July 1st. So the kids are playing again July 1st. So if anybody wants to come.
Okay, Mr. Dilberger.
First of all, we're not still commenting on the resolutions, right?
No, we're done. Public session, anything you want to talk about?
I just want to clarify something. I think that word hate is very crass, but I used it. But I want to just extend on it a little bit. I want to say I meant it only in the best way. But let me just comment on the school a little bit. I made a joke there, but sorry, I didn't go over too good. But just anything in the way of looking at it, single item that takes over 40% of the budget is out of line. Something's wrong. That school has been running in the wrong direction for many, many years. It has very little to do with education, and mostly to do with the feeding of the children and this and that. And I've thought this for a long time. The education is, the way it's presented to children is really bad. The concepts that we're using concept that came over to this country in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s from Germany. We're still using that with these children today. That's what I mean. It's unacceptable. It's obsolete. The whole concept of getting up 8 stories and going to a certain place to learn whatever, the arithmetic and that is wrong for these children. They're not the children of 1880 or even 1940 or 50 when I was a little boy. It's a different world. Everybody's got their gadget now. Well, the teacher is up there in the front of the room. I don't have to be there. They're looking at their gadget. Nobody has to be there to see it. This is all wrong. It's the schools, not only this school, all these schools should be shut down, the moratorium put on for 5 years until they come up with an idea for these children. This is totally ridiculous. All schooling has to do now is vendors selling whatever they're selling, administrators, teachers, and whatever else, bus drivers. Of course, we don't have much of that here in this town. Bus drivers and everything else that has to do with the system. It's not about a schoolroom. The schoolroom is dead. It's done. And everything. Therein is what I hate. We should have moved on from, I don't know, 50 years ago, we should have moved on to something else. What, I can't really tell you. I have ideas in my own head what would have worked with me, but I'm an old man now. And these things wouldn't work now, but they're certainly not working on these children. All right, I'll leave that. I got up here because I was still upset about that skate park. It should be open. The concept of safety We're always into the safety. Nobody wants to get hurt. Well, nothing wrong with that. But people do get hurt. Just like down at the beach the other day. People got hurt, one guy got killed. These things happen. Certainly, as you said, the lifeguards and everything, they tried their best and they did a good job and all of that. Fine. But people get hurt. It never went through your head, or has it, to shut the beach down? Put armed guards to keep the people away from the ocean because they could get killed and hurt? Of course not. That's ridiculous. All right? At the, 2 weeks ago at the Friday night concert, a woman got hurt and an ambulance came and carted her off. I have no idea. I guess she was all right. She hurt her leg. She fell and she hurt her leg. That's an injury. You want to shut the Friday night concerts down? What are we doing here? These boys love this thing. That's the only thing they do in town that they always loved. You put that thing up, and they always were there. You know, not on a rainy day or anything, but they were always there. It was always 15, 20 of those guys there, all the time, constant. And everything. And you shut it down and locked it up. Take the lock off. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Just let the boys have a good time. Your alternate is, you see them around town, they go in parking lots, that's a heck of a place to do it, and everything, and use their skateboards there, and they, you know, right on Main Street and everything. They're gonna do something because they love that. But you shut that thing down. Please open it up. I used to like to see them doing their stunts and everything as I walk by. But you just want to keep it shut down. Now, all right, maybe you got some sort of action in mind that I have no idea of. All right, then that overrules what I'm saying now. But please open that thing up. Take the Jersey barriers out of here. What kind of an idea was that to put those things in there? Oh yeah, safety. Remember a couple of years ago when this malarkey started with the COVID? They took the benches off the boardwalk. What was that? Were you afraid the benches would get sick? What kind of action is this? Everything you want to do, you want to stop. Start doing something. Take the locks off the skate park and let them do their thing again. Of course, they'll get hurt. You get hurt all the time, like I say. It's an act of God. And the insurance won't pay for it.
Anyone else? Yes?
Jane Salmon, 1613, Route 71. So I had a few things prepared. I was going to go through a whole timeline of what's been happening with the skate park from the beginning when it closed over a year ago. But I know it's getting late, and I just didn't want to. I don't want to take too much time. So I'm going to just summarize some things. Back on May 3rd, we had a petition that we submitted to the council, and I haven't heard anything about that, like where it stands. Just as a reminder, we wanted to create a fund to earmark donations for the skate park in the budget, and also create a committee of community volunteers to work with the borough to ensure those funds go solely to skate park improvements and activities. So I don't know what happened with that. That just kind of fell on deaf ears or got filed in the circular file somewhere, I guess. We were also told that the skate park is no longer under the jurisdiction of the Recreation Commission, which I'm a little perplexed about. But it's clearly listed on Belmar.com as one of the 7 recreation facilities. So I'm not quite sure why that is. Is it because of, none of the recreation budget has gone towards the skate park? Is that why? I'm point out is several times when safety was cited as a reason for closing the skate park, we were told it was because there were lawsuits and the JIF really wanted it closed down because there were safety concerns. Our research indicates there are 0 suits on record against Belmar for the skate park injuries, for any injuries that occurred there. Perhaps, in theory, if they say it enough, it'll be deemed true. But we haven't found any evidence to that fact, and we did ask you if you can inquire with the JIF to see if anything was reported to them.
I did, and I don't know if you want me to talk now or let you go.
Sure.
There was a lawsuit, I have it right here.
Okay.
And it involved a minor who suffered a broken leg requiring a reduction internal screw fixation surgery, AKA he really broke his leg bad. The allegation was that it was a direct result of the dangerous condition, which was the skate ramps. The investigation revealed that the dangerous condition did in fact exist, and that it was in fact the skate park. So yes, there was a lawsuit.
Okay.
I understand your investigation revealed nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you for a fact that it exists because I have it.
I believe you.
But
there's enough detail to
yes.
indicate that it's a fact. Okay. All right. But that was one, and it's been open since 2009.
This injury occurred on specifically, one second, in 2019. So this injury is what sparked the investigation into the condition of the skate park and subsequently the closure.
Okay.
So, again, the answer is yes, that there's one,
right.
But it only takes one. And
right. I understand that. But in, so it's been 10 years, right? And had one bad accident.
No, this was in 2019. I'm sorry, I don't know.
So the skate park's been open since 2009?
Oh, that's correct, yes.
Right, so that's 10 years, right?
Yes, but since that time, now the skate park has fallen to a state that now it is considered a dangerous condition of public property, and therefore the liability is astronomical.
Okay.
So this type of injury, it's a lot of zeros.
Okay. And the status of that? Can you talk to that?
That case was dismissed on a technicality.
Okay.
It was an improper service, and then the attorney handling it appeared to have missed the statute of limitations, which for those who don't understand is the statute of limitations is essentially a fuse. Once that fuse burns up, there's no more fuse. You can't trigger the complaint. So they failed to properly serve the borough, so the borough locked out. There's no better way to explain it. It was an extremely unfortunate situation.
Gotcha. So, I don't know. I wanted to mention that at the previous meeting, it was stated that by the mayor that Belmar had is waiting to receive about 4 or 5 plans from skate park companies. And they will submit them to Parks and Rec for approval, and then the approval plans will go out for bid. But we haven't heard anything about a deadline, when you've given these skate park companies to present these plans to you, and at what point should the public be expecting to hear those skate park companies present at a future council meeting?
Our borough administrator's been working on that. You want to give an update on that, borough administrator?
Yes, Mayor. We've talked to Bricktown County for Long Branch, other jurisdictions that put new skate parks in. We're waiting for proposals from different companies, and then we're waiting for presentations. So we've got emails out, we've had phone conversations. I just received some from Bricktown yesterday, and we're trying to get everything together for presentations for a further council meeting.
All right, so you don't have a deadline set for when that information?
As soon as I get the information and I meet with the skate park people, they come down, they'll do a proposal, and we got to get some sort of number that we're looking at. We got to make sure that the overall safety of the ground down there at Dempsey Park is the right place to be. So we're waiting on it.
Okay, so so you're saying it's possible it might not be at Dempsey Park anymore?
We have to look at all options. I don't know where it's going to be. We've got to make sure that it's still safe enough for that foundation down there based on the condition of how that's all padded in there. blacktop there. That was one of the main conditions that they found out, so.
Okay.
And as regards to the lawsuit, you know, I know George Comatas is here, he's testified, he's talked to the council how many injuries he's handled over the years there, so, listen, we're trying, we know how valuable the skate park is, we're trying to get the proposal together. It's a monetary issue. Like we've always discussed, there's a lot of money involved in putting a skate park in, to bring it up to code and bring it up to speed for 2022. So we're working on proposals, and then we have to make a decision based on what the proposals come in at.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate something that I've mentioned in other meetings. My group has offered to fundraise, but in order to do that, we would have to form a 501(c)(3), and we're willing to do that, but we need a commitment from the town, and you know.
I've had this communication with you, and I know Patrick's here. We cannot allow you to take over a section of the borough property as a committee.
Oh, we're not looking to do that at all.
But your letter-
To help you raise the funds.
Right.
If it's
If you want to raise the funds, you've been saying that for a year now, we've seen nothing come in, but we can't give you a letter that gives you exclusive rights to a skate park. You had demands in that letter that our lawyer reviewed, that there's no way we can, as a municipality, agree to that type of letter. And that's what I talked to you about.
All right.
Can I just ask you a question? How much are you committed to raising?
150,000. I mean, the estimate was projected at 300,000. If the town can match that.
We've had several meetings over the past few months, and I know you're here at every meeting to talk about the skate park, and I know the mayor and council have told you that we value the skate park. But there's priorities and infrastructure concerns that we have, there's money to be raised, and it's like anything else. We have to make sure that the taxpayers of Belmar understand what it will cost for the skate park. That skate park was properly funded years ago. There was no taxpayer dollars in there. So it's a whole different thing, it's not under Parks and Recreation. I've offered early on in 19 for somebody to take that over. Nobody wanted to take it over. Nobody wanted any responsibility of it. So we've had these meetings. I've met with you and the gentleman from the skate shop, and you guys have suggested ways for us to raise money and piecemeal a skate park with 10,000 here, 15,000 there, 20,000 here.
That was just one idea.
Well, and the idea it's about getting the funds to make sure we have a skate park that's safe and fits into what we need. I know Mr. Dilberg doesn't agree with safety, but that's okay. So we're getting our proposals together. We've worked on this, and we continue to work on it. We know how important it is.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, sure.
I know you're privately willing to raise $150,000, but oftentimes, as you've brought up in the past, these skate parks are really more of a regional park. It's not just for borough residents and kids come from, I don't know what the primary service radius is. Would you be willing to go to other municipalities and see if they would be willing to participate in offsetting the cost of the park as well? I know you live in Wall, other municipalities too, since this draws, people from the surrounding area. Is that something your group would be interested in?
I don't know. I mean, we've primarily been focused, primarily been focused on Belmar just because it's, the one that's currently in danger of, has been closed. And I live in close proximity to this one. And that's the one my son has walked to since he was 10 years old. So haven't really given much thought as to other jurisdictions.
Thank you.
That's really it. Just, one point I just wanted to make, because we've been hearing for months that you've been talking to people, it hasn't felt to us, or to me personally, that we've gotten far. So I guess this is more information than we've had in a while, so I thank you for that.
No problem, thank you.
Anyone else? Joe?
Joe McAvoy, 700 Main Street. Just a stone's throw away, Mayor. But unfortunately for some people here, I don't live in a glass house. All right. First person I'd like to address tonight is John Sabian, Multimedia Director. John ran up here at the end of the last meeting 2 weeks ago and said, talked about how everybody has 15 different jobs here in the borough. And I respect everybody's hard work and commitment. Any organization over 30 members, it's a 20-80 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. I get it. I worked in the corporate world. It doesn't work like that in the Marine Corps, I can tell you that. I admire everybody's hard work, but let me just review for you, because I'm getting sick and tired of talking about the flags as much as you're probably tired of hearing about it. Now, first of all, for months last year, the firefighters, veterans, they sent emails, they phone called, they talked to people in the borough to try to get lights on the War Memorial between 11th and 12th Avenue. We did that for months. September rolled around. A group of the veterans approached me and said, can you speak on our behalf? Because we're not getting anywhere with this. There's no lights on the memorial, and we don't want to go up there. We don't have the temperament for it. Can you please go and talk on our behalf? And I didn't want to come up here. So the last thing I wanted to do is come up here, because I hate public speaking. I want to vomit every time I come up here. One of the men has 7 combat tours. What am I going to tell him? No? So the mayor gave a speech on 9/11, how you guys are bringing patriotism back to Belmar. Made it about the flag and God Bless America at 9th Avenue Pier. And they wanted me to come in soon after that, in September. And I said, no, we're not going to use the flag as a political football. We're going to wait till after the election, and if it's not taken care of by then, I'll come in there and I'll speak on your behalf. They had a lot to lose. Businesses in town, families in town for years, they were scared. They had a right to be. A lot of people have been threatened in this town by certain people. So I agreed to do it. Now, before I did it, I guess it was late September, early October, Councilman Brennan, you had the dune planning, and I volunteered for that, right? Dug the holes for the trees, the dune grass. John Sabia was up there taking pictures. He wanted to take my photograph, and I said, your bosses don't want to see my photo anywhere on Belmar.com. I said, but can you please do me a favor? And he said, what do you need? And I said, I'd really like for you, is there any way we can get lights on the flags at the Firefighters Memorial and the War Memorial? Because we've been trying for months and we haven't gotten anywhere. And I said, what can you do for us? And he said, sir, I'll go back today and I'll put a work order in and we'll contact JCP&L and we'll hook up some electricity and we'll get it taken care of for you, no problem. One of the 15 jobs he said he would do. And he shook my hand and I thanked him and I said, God bless you. I appreciate it. And I'm sure he came in and he mentioned it and somebody said, ah, screw that. They're dead, they don't vote, who cares? But he promised me, and he shook my hand, and he broke his promise. Then I came in here on November 9th, and I addressed you, Councilman McCracken. And that's how it started.
Joe, could you do me a favor?
Yes.
Rather than put yourself in these compromising positions, these people who are talking to you and asking you these things and saying that they're frustrated you can't get...
They're not frustrated, they're scared.
Could
They've been threatened.
They don't need to be scared of me. Could you ask them to call me directly, please? I would be more
Call
than
you
happy to.
directly.
Yes, please.
All
Thank
right.
you.
We'll do that. And also, the May 7th council meeting disappeared from YouTube, just vanished. Be nice if we can get that back up there. George, I said a few things about you at the last meeting, and I wanted to say one thing in particular. But I wanted to say it to you personally.
Everybody else in the.
Please, this is a public session.
I'm going to just guide you that you're now talking about private individuals, so you are creating a record, and if you're welcome to talk,
Roger that.
we can't prevent him from talking.
You know, like,
But they are private individuals.
if he has issues with people that are employees, I think.
I don't have an issue with them. Can I speak? It's a public open session. It's where we exercise our First Amendment rights. It's free speech, not nice speech, not nice speech,
He
free
was
speech.
asking myself a question, and you're welcome to talk. Please proceed.
George, you weren't here. And I said a few things about you. I thanked you for all your work on the flags. I wanted to say one thing in particular, but I wanted to say it to you in person. You came up here and you said your big regret in life is that you never served in the military. Don't have that regret, George. My biggest regret in life, I can't be more like you, understanding and loving and concerned about everybody. But it's not my nature. And part of the reason it's not my nature is because I spent so much time in the military. So don't have that regret, George. I admire you more than you, far more than you admire me. That's what I wanted to say to you. And I also remember the time we saved a life together. The bridge jumper off the Route 35 bridge when he flew his aorta off his heart. And the two of us saved his life together. So I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you. Councilman Brent, good stuff for you, I promise. I received a call from Colleen Payless on the Environmental Commission yesterday. Yeah, she called me up and spoke to me about the backpack blowers. Now, from an air pollution standpoint, you came from a noise pollution standpoint, but from an air pollution standpoint, yeah, briefly you mentioned it, and it never registered with me, so I apologize for that. From an air pollution standpoint, these things are horrible. In fact, I read that you could drive a Toyota Corolla cross country and it would put out less emissions and less particulates than if you ran a backpack blower for an hour. You could drive a Ford Raptor truck 1,000 miles. Just the two-stroke gas-powered leaf blower. I had no idea they put out that much pollution. So if you come from an air pollution standpoint instead of a noise pollution standpoint, get that ordinance together and ban these things. Harvard linked air pollution to autism in 2017. And if you overlay autism with air pollution in the nation, it's almost a perfect overlay. It's unbelievable. And, but I mean, come at it from that angle, nobody can argue with you. Councilman McCracken. November 23rd, last year, after I spoke on November 9th, 3 people up there, I won't mention any names, one of them was you, promised me that flagpole would get painted by the summer. Summer started at 05:41 today. Now, I still have faith in God, country, and Corps, but I don't have any more faith in you. I'm sorry. No, listen, I'm done in 30 seconds, and you can talk about my mother.
Allow the councilman to please consent to continue.
I'm not so sure that I said by the summer, I said this summer. I followed up on that a couple weeks ago when we were there for the Memorial Day parade with the, or not parade, the Memorial Day
It's not a parade
commemoration.
on Memorial Day.
The Memorial Day commemoration, where we chatted, spoke to DPW, was told it's on their list, couldn't get it done earlier in the spring because of the weather, but it's gonna be done.
It's going to get done. That's all I got. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Anyone else? All right, April, seeing none?
Can I have a motion to close the public session and adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you for everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for coming out.
I find right now,